Hello, hello, and welcome to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. I am joined today by Dr. Jay Wrigley. So Jay is a functional medicine doctor and a naturopathic physician. And you guys know that, longtime listeners of the show know that I love talking to functional medicine practitioners because they're on the front lines. They're talking to people and applying this and seeing how people respond to it. They usually have a lot more insight into a lot of the things that are actually affecting people. And Dr. Wrigley is unique, not unique, but he has an interesting practice in that it's not just face-to-face, but he has an online practice where he can actually talk to you through Skype, through Google Hangouts, through your phone. And he can do a lot of good things for you, even if you are not in his hometown there of Charlotte, North Carolina. So he's kind of, like I said, he's on the front lines. He's doing a lot of good things. And so we want to pick his brain today on the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. So Dr. Wrigley, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about this. So let's get into your background. Why did you want to be a doctor?
Oh, actually, it was just my journey began in the middle of my college years. I was an athlete, and I guess I was exposed to somewhat of healthcare along the lines. But what happened for me was that I actually, interesting enough, met another student when I was in college, and he had come from a background that I had never heard before. He was actually Canadian, and his family was oriented and grew up in the field of kind of natural health care, which I knew nothing about at the time because,
right.
And I had not had health problems and all this stuff. But to just make the long story short, this fellow by the name of Johnny exposed me to some interesting material that was certainly outside the box at the time. It was more about that if you were not doing well with your health or whatnot, that a better approach than maybe drugs and surgery would be to look at things like of detoxifying your body and getting rid of things inside of you that are probably interfering with your health or whatnot. And again, this was strange to me. What was fascinating about this journey that I'm telling you about was that somehow this guy convinced me to go through a 10-day period of time and go through a cleanse. And this is at an age where, again, I'm not unhealthy. I'm an athlete, whatever. And this guy, I brought along with this idea of going through a certain way of changing up the way that I typically look at food or whatnot and following something for a 10-day period of time, which at that time, it's not something I typically would support now. But the purpose of it was a lot of fasting and eating lots of fruits and then using things like olive oil and lemon juice to flush out the gallbladder, all this stuff that made no sense to me whatsoever at the time. But I did this, and I don't want to harp on this a lot. I want to say that what happened through that experience was I was blown away at the feedback that people that knew me at the time to come to me and say, wow, what have you done for this period of time when I wasn't unhealthy at all, but people were saying things like, you're so much different. Your eyes are so much clearer. Your energy and your focus. I mean, they were pointing things out to me that I would have never even thought about, right? So anyway, to circle back around, the idea of that I did something for a period of time by changing my actions, and it showed up in a lot of profound ways. I wasn't somebody at that point needed to lose weight or wasn't having joint problems or whatnot. But there was a clarification to not only myself but to other people that, wow, there was a shift. There was a shift that was showing up in a positive way to people who knew me and spent a lot of time with me, and there was a shift to me in the fact that, wow, I do feel better and more alive and more focused, right? So all of that is just to say that this was kind of a beginning that opened my mind that, you know what, I'm fascinated by the idea of looking at healthcare from the point of view of that if you're not well, then what needs to happen is that the producing of health where health does not exist, as opposed to the treatment or modalities that basically either suppress symptoms or manage disease, right? So anyway, that started this whole process, and then and through that, I decided to seek out a journey in healthcare and going to med school and whatnot. But I knew that at that point that I wanted to do that with the foundation being that the tools that I wanted to use for healthcare would fall a little bit outside of just the typical pharmaceutical approach and surgical approach. I wanted to implement, more of a holistic pattern of actually working people through from not being well to well, and what were the steps that needed to take place in order to do so.
Yeah, and that to me seems to be the big difference between a traditional doctor that I've been to many times in my life versus a functional doctor, where a traditional doctor sees you as a collection of diseases that need to be fixed, whereas a functional doctor typically is trying to restore health, and they have a more positive goal in mind, and so they tend to do things that are a little more holistic, that are a little more lifestyle based, as opposed to here's your 3 medications and come see me again in 3 months.
Sure. Yeah, and I would frame that in this way, is that I think that the conventional or allopathic model that you're talking about, as opposed to the functional model, is really that the difference between looking at a problem as what do we have available in our toolbox to alleviate the symptoms of the problem that you have. This is what I see out there in the conventional model. Whereas I think the functional approach is much more at, let's look at where the root cause of this dysfunction started. And that could be, that could be anything from genetic history, but it certainly could be related to your gut because of the onslaught of poor choices for a long period of time or whatnot. So it's really looking at where, do you want to go after the root cause of this and make the correction there? Or do you want to alleviate symptoms at the top of that scale? To each his own for how they choose that. But I think that more and more people are coming around to, I want to address this on on a deeper level.
Okay. Yeah. And I think more power to you, to men like you, that are men and women like you, that are taking these steps and really doing some amazing things in the field of medicine.